were asked a question about the tune Airegin, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to look at this essential bass line and also to get a deeper dive into this tune that can be a little bit hard to navigate. Let's do it. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rubicki. I'm glad that you're here. We're talking about a tune called Airegin, which is the word Nigeria spelled backwards. It was written by Sonny Rollins, and there are several famous recordings of it, but I think the two most famous and the ones we want to talk about today are from the Miles Davis album Baggs' Groove, that has Percy Heath on bass, and the album Cookin' with the Miles Davis Quintet, that has Paul Chambers on bass. And there are some differences in these arrangements and in the quote-unquote essential bass lines that happen there. In the Baggs' Groove version with Percy Heath on bass, the drums, we're talking about the vamp parts, essentially the intro that in the PC version also happens in the tune itself. But let's just talk about this as the intro. In the Baggs' Groove version, the drums start and the bass occurs on beats 3 and 4 of each bar. And it just goes 5-1 of what is essentially an F7 sound, and then 5-1 of what is a G-flat 7 sound. So an F7 sound would be, the fifth would be C, 5-1, D-flat, G-flat, 5-1. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. And the way that the drums play, it's a little bit tricky. You have to listen a bunch of times to really see where the bass fits in there. And of course, take in the melody as well. That will inform where the bass actually lines up. It's a little bit weird, but just give it a bunch of listens and you'll be able to do it. And that's really all that particular arrangement is, but we should know it because that is sometimes done very specifically when we play Airegin. The other version is from Paul Chambers, and this is also done very specifically when this particular version is played. And it's again still 1-5, but it's a little bit different. Starting on the root, go up to the fifth, back down to the root, using that bambula or tresillo rhythm, which is 1. So 1 and 2 and 3. F, C, F, G flat, D flat, G flat, F. But faster. And that not only happens in the intro, but is also sort of a replacement for the second A section in the form when you do the this version of it from Cookin'. So knowing these two versions is helpful when you're playing it on a gig, and if somebody is trying to mimic these arrangements, it's helpful to know, oh, on the Cookin' version that this vamp might happen again, but it actually replaces the second A in the form. The form is A, B, A, C. So you play A, B, and then this vamp replaces the second A, and then you play C out. It's a 36-bar form, which is a very unusual and takes a second to sort of wrap your head around. But that is all of the essential bass line part of it. Know these simple lines, know how they fit into the rhythm, and you'll be good to go when you play Airegin the next time and you hear these sort of arrangements. Navigating the tune is a little bit of a different story. There's a few things about this that make it a little weird outside of this 36-bar form. One thing is that the harmonic set within the tune, some parts of it don't really logically, or don't follow a really generic movement from one chord to the next, or the chords are a distance away from each other that are a little bit awkward from the standard. And so we need to find a way to navigate that. As far as how should you deal with this tune, this is definitely a tune you're gonna have to sit with and take time and figure out, what am I gonna do here? You can't just really throw caution to the wind and make it up on the spot if you wanna sound good. It's gonna take some study for this particular tune, which is why we're talking about it. In the A sections, you have this element of having the core sound of the harmony. For example, in the first 4 bars, it starts on F minor and bar 1, then goes to C7, the fifth of that sound of that F minor, and then goes back to F minor. chords that are separated like that a fifth away is actually not the most common movement to go from 1 to directly to 5 and then back to, well, 5 to 1 is normal, but going from 1 directly to 5 is not super normal, and so we need to find a way to navigate that. That also happens in the second 4 bars of the A section. Then the B section has this sort of very common sort of bebop thing where you've got these moving 2/5s that happen really quickly, and it goes to B major, not super common chord in a lot of the tunes we play. And that B section itself is 12 bars long, which is a little bit weird for a full section. The A is a repetition of the first A, and then C is a little bit sort of more quote unquote logical, and yet you have this idea of the bar 1 of the C is B minor 7, right? And then bar 2 is B minor 7, E flat 7. So when we're looking at it, you sort of, your mind resets like, oh no, I need to play something else on this beat 1 of bar 2, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but it can throw us off when we're looking at it visually. Not only that, but because of all that and the fast tempo and the odd form, all those things together, I think forced both Percy Heath and Paul Chambers to be caught a little bit maybe flat-footed in the recording. What I mean by that is when you look at the transcriptions of the bass lines, which are available for you in a link below, when you look at them, you'll find there's lots of quote-unquote mistakes, like a lot. They're arriving at chords, quote unquote, late. They're very often not playing roots on downbeats. They're making some sort of interesting note choices that don't really make analytical sense. And I think a lot of that is because of the nature of all of these elements of the tune itself. They are master players, absolutely, and they make everything work. They also use a lot of repetition in their own lines, once again, giving you permission to use repetition in your lines. But they're not sort of elegantly really connecting a lot of these things. It's a bit messy, to be totally honest, and they are human, and I think it's very understandable that it would be messy. If we were to, for example, try and correct their lines, I wondered what it might sound like. So what I did was I took a couple choruses and I combined their 2 lines a little bit and corrected some of the notes that they played to try to be more elegant and efficient in movement from one chord to the next, and to try to play roots on downbeats and so on and so forth. Take a listen to what that sounds like where I've corrected, again, quote unquote, corrected the master. It's a little bit scary. Let's take a listen. So you can probably hear that some of that stuff I played is logical and some of it is a little bit awkward. Some of that is because of Percy and PC, some of that is because of me, and some of it is just because of the, as I say, sort of partial awkwardness of the movement of this harmony. You might find it interesting to compare the 2 lines on top of each other, and I've included that in the PDFs that you can get in the links below, where I've got one line right on top of the next, it's one bar right on top of another bar between PC and Percy Heath, so that you can sort of compare what are they doing in the harmony in this particular moment vertically. So hopefully you'll find that helpful. You could certainly for yourself, when you are working on making walk-on lines for this tune, you can certainly do what I did and try to sort of correct what the transcriptions are. But a lot of times that doesn't make sense, as you heard, because of the context of the music that's happening around it. That's why they were making those decisions in the moment based on what they were playing and also the music that was happening from the other players. So we need to be able to internalize this tune ourselves. There's a couple ways of approaching making walking lines, and one is a sort of conceptual one. That has to do with harmonic reduction. Let's take and eliminate a bunch of these chords. For example, I'll put up on the screen here, rather than having the C altered chord, which by the way, parenthetically, you'll notice in the corrected line, I'm playing notes that go with the altered scale, but in both the transcriptions from the masters, they don't really necessarily play, for example, G flat there, a flat 5. They would oftentimes play a G natural there. So there's another sort of discussion. But so going back to this harmonic reduction, you can eliminate a bunch of these chords when we really get down to what is the root of what the harmony is doing. And essentially the first 3 bars very much are like a blues, where you've got this one chord that happens for essentially kind of 4 bars, but that last bar really becomes a dominant chord. So we're eliminating that C7. It's really just an add-on to the sound of that F minor thing in the first 4 bars. And the same thing with the second 4 really just becomes B flat minor for that. Then for the B section, what I did was eliminate the 2s in the 2 5s. So we start on B flat minor, and normally there is a 2-5 that goes to C major, but a 2-5 always is just really at its root the 5. So I'm making G7 the 5 of C, and so on and so forth. Then we go back to the A section, same as the first, and then the C section is essentially just 5 to 1, 5 to 1. That's essentially what happens. So I'm not saying that you necessarily memorize the tune this way, but this is the undergirding of the structure of the tune. And so when you approach learning the tune like this, you'll have a better sense of being able to grasp the whole tune. This is something we talk about at length in my course, Jazz Bass 101 Walking Essential Tunes. I want to invite you to check that out if you haven't already. We go into lines and into forms into great detail like this. So going back to memorizing Airegin, understanding where the important movements are is going to keep you locked in. And in fact, you can start by just memorizing this, in fact, and then add in the extra parts, because these are really the critical things. You can also, like what Percy and PC was doing, use this idea for your line. You can forget about the C altered in bar 2, for example, and just keep playing F minor. It will work entirely, because the function is an extra. The C7 function there is really just an extra sound. It's an ornament in a way, a harmonic ornament. So think about this reduction, apply it to the actual chords that you might see written. And that's an important distinction that I want to make as well, once again, to remind you what is written in a legal real book. What I've even given you here is just a copy of the general amalgam of the sound that is happening. Some people even have a different chord at the beginning of of the B section. Sometimes people put D flat major 7 there. I'm not sure where that comes from. Maybe some of you will tell me in the comments. Nonetheless, what is written is not exactly what was played. And I have not taken the time to exactly transcribe what the pianos are doing on these instances. But for example, like I said, the C7 is technically written as an altered chord. I don't hear the bass players playing what sounds really like an altered chord, or at least intending that. So understanding that the ear is always the prominent priority. The second way that we can approach connecting these disparate chords that are these awkward distances away is to use what I have introduced to you before as Ron Carter's vertical vines. And that is to look at each beat one at a time, each quarter note, and think about all the options that are available. Let me put that up on the screen for you. So to just describe what is on the screen, what you're actually seeing, what I've done is assigned, you can see at the top written beat 1, beat 2, beat 3. Each of these vertical columns represent one quarter note. And I've listed the 12 chromatic notes within a octave in each beat. Obviously there are more than one octave, but I can't represent that on one page. So I've also indicated at the beginning of each bar, each section of 4 vertical lines, I've put a red thing. This is the root of the chord of the moment. You can see the chord is written at the top. This is the root on beat 1. And every square that has a sort of blue highlight are the chord tones that make up the chord of the moment. But all those other notes are technically possible, and I've also identified them as flat 5, or CH means a chromatic note that's available, the 2, the 13, or the 6, and so on and so forth. The reason I'm introducing this to you is because when you see, hey, I want to play the note C on beat 1 of bar 2, what is a note that can get me there from the available notes from beat 4 of bar 1 that makes sense with an F minor? How do I get to that C in a logical way? And obviously the choices are always, strong choices are to approach it chromatically from above or below. So we can do D flat to C, or we can do B to C, right? Now those are not chord tones in F minor. Although you can get away with that D flat because technically the scale that would go with it basically is F Aeolian. That's coming from the major scale of A flat major, which has a D flat in it. So that D flat is in the key, which makes sense, but it's not in the chord of F minor. So we have to make these decisions. Okay, if I'm not ending up on beat 4 at something that is close to C, the root of measure 2, I need to then find the next logical note I want to play that is close to where I am currently. And a logical choice would be to play a chord tone from C altered. So that would be C, E natural, G flat, or B flat, as you can see highlighted in blue there. So you can sort of plot out choices for not only where you are and where you're going to go, but where you're coming from. So wherever you end up in the 4th column of bar 2, that can help to inform where you're going to be in beat 1 of the next bar. Hopefully that makes sense. I've done, I think, 12 bars of this, partially because I have to go in and do a lot of manual changes to this. It's not an automatic thing. I just made it in like Keynote. Anyway, but I provided you with a blank thing that you can fill out yourself. You could just put the chord tones in there if you want instead of every single note, and that can also make it easier. But the idea is to give you a visual representation of the options that are available in a given moment to move to the next note and what those options are for the next note. Essentially, what this comes down to at its base is taking these awkward moments harmonically and finding your own way to navigate them. And that can be a whole bunch of repetition on just one bar going to the second bar. For example, from F minor to C, bars 1 and 2, I can try 10 different things to see what makes sense and what sounds good to me. If I play F, G, A flat, and now this is beat 3, and so what am I going to do if I want to end up on C? I could play B flat, C, that's close. Okay, that sounds okay. What if I played D flat, C, that sounds okay. B to C, that sounds good. Okay, that sounds good. What if I played D, C? Technically, that's a whole step away, but it doesn't sound really great based on the key of the moment, for example. You can get away with it. In fact, Percy plays a couple times D naturals in here. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Figure out what sounds good to you, write it down, and really internalize that. Play that when you rehearse this tune with yourself, when you practice by yourself, again and again and again. Figure out lines that make sense to you and that you like, and that's going to give you the ability to go and play it live. You don't have to create something new every single time you play, especially at a fast tempo. That's a lie that people do that. You are going to have to rely on work that you've previously done to be able to navigate this unusual but extremely cool tune. I hope that it was helpful for you to talk about all this stuff. Look for those links below. PDF, I've got those transcriptions for a very affordable price for both the players. I've got the link to my courses that are available as well. Thanks for joining me today. It's a pleasure as always. And always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.